The silence in the lecture hall stretched on. 5,000 beings from 100 different worlds sat frozen in their seats. They had come to learn about measured response. They had learned something else entirely. Instructor Ven straightened from her bow. Her 4 eyes moved across the audience, taking in their expressions. She had been teaching for 200 years. She had seen shock before. She had seen fear. But she had never seen this particular combination of emotions on so many faces at once. It was the look of creatures who had just realized the universe was different than they thought. I believe, Ven said finally, that we should end today's lecture early. A murmur went through the crowd. This was unprecedented. Ven never ended a lecture early. Her classes ran exactly as long as they were supposed to, not a minute more or less. We have much to think about, Ven continued. What Sergeant Yuna has shared with us today will require time to process. I suggest you all return to your quarters and reflect on what you have learned. The students began to rise. They moved slowly, as if in a dream. Many of them glanced at Yuna as they passed. Some with curiosity, some with fear, a few with something that might have been admiration. One by one, they filed out of the lecture hall. Soon, only a handful of beings remained. Instructor Ven, Sergeant Yuna, and a small group of students who had gathered near the front of the stage. The Vor representative was among them. He stepped forward, his massive form moving with surprising gentleness. Sergeant Yuna, he rumbled. May I ask you something? Yuna nodded. Of course. In my culture, we value measured response above all else. We believe that balance is the highest virtue. But after hearing your story, I find myself wondering. He paused, searching for words. Do humans ever think about the consequences of your actions? Do you consider what might happen if your enemies respond to your excess with their own? Yuna looked up at the Vor. He was easily 4 times her size. She showed no fear. We think about it, she said. But we have decided that some things are more important than consequences. What things? Each other. The Vor was silent for a moment. Then he did something unexpected. He reached out with one massive hand and very gently touched Yuna's shoulder. I hope, he said, that I never have to fight against humans. And I hope even more that if I am ever captured, I have friends who would come for me the way your people came for those 12 soldiers. He turned and walked away, his heavy footsteps echoing through the empty hall. The Finari student approached next. Her wings were still agitated, but her voice was calmer now. I must admit, she said, that I do not fully understand your species. Your mathematics are impossible. Your logic is flawed. And yet, she paused. And yet, when you spoke of those 12 soldiers hoping for rescue, I felt something. Something I do not have a name for. We call it empathy, Yuna said. The ability to feel what others feel. To share their pain and their hope. The Finari considered this. Perhaps we have empathy too. Perhaps we have simply forgotten how to use it. She bowed in the manner of her species, a quick dip of her head and wings, and then she too departed. Finally, only Instructor Ven remained. She stood at the edge of the stage, watching Yuna with all 4 of her eyes. Sergeant, she said, may I ask you a personal question? Yes. Of the 8,000 soldiers who died in that rescue, did you know any of them? Yuna was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than before. One of them was my brother. His name was Do-Yun. He was a pilot on the cruiser Moonlight. His ship was destroyed in the 2nd system. Ven's eyes widened. I am sorry. I did not mean to open a wound. You did not, Yuna said. Do-Hyun knew the risks. He volunteered for the mission the moment he heard about it. He told me, before he left, that he was proud to be part of something greater than himself. He said that if he died bringing those 12 soldiers home, his life would have meaning. She looked up at Ven. I miss him every day, but I'm not angry. I am not bitter. My brother died doing what humans do. He died fighting for his people. There is no greater honor. Ven was silent for a long moment. Then she walked forward and stood directly in front of Yuna. Sergeant, she said, I have studied many species. I have learned their languages, their customs, their beliefs. I thought I understood the galaxy. But today, I learned that I understood nothing. She paused. Humans are dangerous. Not because of your weapons or your technology. Those are primitive compared to many species. Humans are dangerous because of your hearts. You love too deeply. You fight too hard. You never give up. These things make you unpredictable. These things make you terrifying. Yuna said nothing. I will be honest with you, Ven continued. After today, I will recommend to the Galactic Council that they change their approach to humanity. They have been treating you like children, like newcomers who need guidance. They were wrong. What will you recommend? I will recommend that they treat you as equals, that they respect your traditions, and that they never, ever give you a reason to come for them the way you came for those 12 soldiers. For the first time since the lecture began, Yuna smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was there. That would be wise, she said. Ven nodded. Then she turned and walked toward the door. She paused at the threshold and looked back one final time. Sergeant Yuna, thank you for the lesson. I do not think I will ever forget it. And then she was gone. Yuna stood alone in the empty lecture hall. The holographic display had turned off. The lights had dimmed. Silence filled the massive space dot. She thought about Do-Yun, about his smile, about the last time she had seen him when he was boarding the transport that would take him to his ship. He had waved at her. He had told her not to worry. He had promised to come back. He had not come back. But 12 others had, because of him. Because of 8,000 others who had given everything for people they had never met. Yuna reached up and touched one of the medals on her chest. It was Do-Yun's medal. It had been awarded to her family after his death. She wore it every day. We brought them home, brother, she whispered. All 12 of them. Then she straightened her uniform, turned, and walked out of the lecture hall. Behind her, the empty hall seemed to hold its breath. The silence remained, but it was different now. It was not the silence of absence. It was the silence of memory, not the silence of 8,000 voices. Still echoing in the darkness. The silence of humanity. And somewhere in the galaxy, in the halls of the Galactic Council, in the military academies of 100 different species, beings were talking. They were sharing what they had learned. They were warning each other about the strange, primitive, impossible creatures from a small blue planet. The creatures who would move stars for each other. The creatures who had proven, beyond any doubt, that love was the most dangerous weapon in the universe. From that day forward, no species ever questioned human excess again. They were too afraid of the answer. For a long moment, no one in the lecture hall spoke. The holographic display still showed the frozen image of the rescue. 12 human soldiers, thin and wounded, being embraced by their rescuers. It was a simple image. It said everything. Instructor Ven stood completely still. Her 4 eyes were fixed on the display. Her blue skin had grown slightly paler. In all her centuries of life, she had never witnessed anything like this. Finally, one of the students found their voice. It was a young Vor, his rocky body trembling slightly as he spoke. Sergeant Yuna, he said, please tell me I misunderstood the numbers. You sent 300 ships and 50,000 troops to rescue 12 soldiers. 30,000 troops, Yuna corrected again. 50,000 volunteered. And we lost 162 ships in total. Some were damaged and had to be abandoned. 162 ships, the Vor repeated, as if he could not believe the words. How many humans died? Yuna did not look away. 8,437. The number hung in the air like a weight. 8,000 humans had died to save 12. A Fenari student stood, her insect wings vibrating with agitation. This is madness. This is not excess. This is insanity. You sacrificed 8,000 lives to save 12? The mathematics make no sense. You are correct, Yuna said calmly. The mathematics make no sense. That is the point. The point? The Fenari was almost shouting now. What possible point could justify such waste? Yuna looked at the alien for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft but clear. When those 12 soldiers were captured, they were alone. They were in enemy hands. They knew they were going to die. And do you know what kept them alive for 30 days? Do you know what gave them the strength to survive torture and starvation and despair? No one answered. Hope, Yuna said. The hope that we would come for them. The knowledge, deep in their hearts, that humanity does not abandon its own. That hope kept them alive. And we proved them right. She turned to face the entire audience. Every human soldier knows this truth from the first day of training. If you are captured, if you are wounded, if you are left behind, we will come for you. It does not matter how far. It does not matter how dangerous. It does not matter how many of us have to die. We will come. Instructor Ven finally moved. She stepped forward, her tall form casting a shadow over Yuna. Sergeant, she said carefully, I understand loyalty. All species value their own. But what you describe is beyond loyalty. It is almost religious. How can such thinking be sustainable? How can your military function if you are willing to sacrifice thousands for a handful? Yuna nodded. That is a fair question. The answer is simple. Every human soldier who goes into battle fights with complete confidence. They know that if they fall, their brothers and sisters will never stop looking for them. They know their life has value. Real value. Not calculated value. She paused. This makes human soldiers very dangerous. We do not fear death the same way others do. Because death is not the end for us. Even if we die, we know our people will remember. They will honor us. And if there is any chance we might still be alive, they will move the stars themselves to bring us home. A soft whisper spread through the crowd. The students were beginning to understand, though the understanding frightened them. Another student spoke up. This one was from a species Yuna did not recognize. They appeared to be made of living crystal, their body reflecting the lights of the lecture hall. Human, the crystal being said, your story is impressive. But surely there must be limits. Surely there is a number where you would say, enough. 10,000 dead? 50,000? A million? Yuna considered the question. I cannot speak for all of humanity, but I can tell you what Admiral Junho said when someone asked him that same question. She closed her eyes for a moment, remembering. A reporter asked him after the mission was complete whether he would have continued if the cost had been higher. If half the fleet had been destroyed, if most of the soldiers had died, would he have kept going? She opened her eyes. Admiral Junho looked at the reporter and said, if I had only one ship left, with only one crew member still breathing, I would have ordered that ship forward. And that last human would have flown straight into the heart of the enemy. Because that is who we are. That is what it means to be human. The crystal being made a strange chiming sound. It might have been fear. Yuna turned back to the holographic display. She touched her datapad and a new image appeared. It showed the 12 rescued soldiers, now healthy and recovered, standing in a line. They wore their dress uniforms. Their eyes were clear and proud. "These are the 12, Yuna said. After they recovered, all 12 returned to active duty. They are still serving today. They will serve until they cannot serve anymore." She pointed to one of the figures, a woman with a scar across her face. "This is Sergeant Hana. She was the ranking soldier among the prisoners. She kept the others alive with her courage and her will. When she returned to Earth, she was awarded the highest military honor our species has. At the ceremony, she gave a speech." Yuna's voice softened again. She said, "I was in that prison for 30 days. Every day, the Krell told me no one was coming. They told me humanity had forgotten me. They told me I would die alone. But I never believed them, because I knew, in my heart, that my people would come. And they did. 8,000 of my brothers and sisters gave their lives to bring me home. I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that sacrifice." The lecture hall was silent again. But this silence was different. It was not shock. It was something deeper. Something like awe. Instructor Ven walked slowly back to her position at the center of the stage. Her 4 eyes were thoughtful. "Sergeant Yuna," she said, "I have taught at this academy for over 200 years. I have studied the military traditions of more than 1,000 species. I have never encountered anything like what you have described." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "Among most species, including my own, individual lives are valued. But they are valued in proportion. 1 life is worth 1 life. 10 lives are worth 10 lives. Your species seems to operate on a different principle entirely." Yuna nodded. "We do. We believe that every human life has infinite value. You cannot put a number on a person. You cannot calculate their worth. And if their life has infinite value, then no sacrifice is too great to save them." "But this leads to mathematical absurdity," Ven said. "If every life is infinite, then 8,000 lives and 12 lives are both infinite. How do you decide?" "We decide with our hearts," Yuna replied. "Those 8,000 soldiers who died? They chose to go. They knew the risks. They decided that the chance to save 12 of their people was worth their lives. That was their choice. We honor that choice." Ven was silent for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She bowed. It was a deep bow, the kind her species reserved for moments of profound respect. When she straightened, her 4 eyes were focused on Yuna with new understanding. "I believe," Ven said slowly, "that I owe you and your species an apology. We have thought of humans as primitive, as children who had only recently learned to walk among the stars. We were wrong." She turned to face the audience. "What Sergeant Yuna has shown us today is not primitiveness. It is something far older and far more powerful. It is the kind of love that builds civilizations, the kind of loyalty that creates legends. We would be wise to remember it." Yuna said nothing. She simply stood at attention, her dark eyes reflecting the light of the holographic display. The lecture hall remained silent, but something had changed. The way the students looked at Yuna was different now. The contempt was gone. The dismissal was gone. In its place was something new, respect. And perhaps, just perhaps, a little fear. The footage showed the first Krell system. 3 planets orbited a dying red star. Defense platforms floated in the darkness, their weapons pointed outward. A patrol fleet of 15 ships guarded the only safe passage. "The Krell expected us to negotiate," Yuna explained. "They thought we would send diplomats. They thought we would beg for our soldiers' lives. They did not understand humans at all." On the screen, the human fleet appeared at the edge of the system. 300 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. The sight was breathtaking. The ships moved as one, like a single living thing. Admiral Junho gave the order immediately, Yuna said. No warning. No communication. No mercy. The human ships opened fire. The display lit up with thousands of weapons discharging at once. Missiles, energy beams, kinetic rounds. The defense platforms never stood a chance. They exploded one by one, filling the space around them with debris. The Krall patrol fleet tried to respond. They launched their own weapons. They called for reinforcements. But the humans were faster, heavier, more desperate. The first system fell in 3 hours, Yuna said. We lost 2 ships. 57 humans died. The Krall lost all 15 patrol vessels and every defense platform. We did not stop to count their dead. One of the Fenari students made a sound of distress. This was not warfare as they understood it. This was something else. Something primal and terrifying. The footage jumped forward. Now it showed the second system. This one was more heavily defended. 20 Krall warships formed a defensive line. Behind them, a space station served as a command center. The Krall had sent warnings ahead, Yuna continued. They knew we were coming. They thought they were ready. The human fleet did not slow down. It did not try to negotiate. It did not offer terms. It simply attacked. Admiral Junho used a tactic called the hammer and anvil, Yuna explained. Half our fleet engaged the enemy directly. The other half circled around and attacked from behind. The Krall fleet was caught in the middle. On screen, the battle played out in deadly detail. Krall ships exploded. Human ships took damage but kept fighting. Escape pods launched from both sides, but no one stopped to pick up survivors. There was no time. There was only the mission. The second system fell in 7 hours, Yuna said. We lost 18 ships. Over 1,000 humans died. But we were still coming. Instructor Ven finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. Sergeant, I must ask, did your people consider stopping? Did anyone suggest that the cost was becoming too high? Yuna turned to look at the alien instructor. Her eyes were hard. No, not once. Not ever. But surely, Ven pressed. After losing so many, someone must have questioned the mission. You still do not understand, Yuna said. Those soldiers who died, they knew the risks. They came anyway. Their only fear was that they might fail, that they might not reach our people in time. That is what drove them. That is what drives all of us. She turned back to the display. On day 27, we reached the third system. This was the last obstacle before the moon where our soldiers were held. The Krall had gathered everything they had left. 50 warships, hundreds of fighter craft, orbital weapons platforms, ground-based missiles. They believed this would stop us. The footage showed the Krall defensive line. It was impressive. It would have stopped any other species, any other fleet. Admiral Junho gathered all his captains for one final meeting, Yuna said. By this point, we had lost 20 ships and almost 2,000 soldiers. Some captains suggested a more careful approach. They wanted to probe the defenses, find weaknesses, take their time. She paused. Admiral Junho refused. He said our soldiers had been prisoners for 27 days. He said they were running out of time. He said we would attack immediately with everything we had. On screen, the human fleet began its final charge. The ships accelerated to attack speed. Weapons systems powered up. Every human in that fleet knew they might not survive the next few hours. They attacked anyway. The battle for the third system lasted 12 hours, Yuna said. It was the largest space battle in human history. Both sides fought with everything they had. The Krall were defending their territory. We were fighting for our people. The footage showed scenes of incredible violence. Ships ramming each other. Boarding parties fighting hand-to-hand in burning corridors. Pilots flying their damaged craft directly into enemy vessels. Sacrifice after sacrifice. At one point, Una said, the cruiser Sunset took critical damage. Its captain was a woman named Mina. She was 34 years old. She had 2 children on Earth. When her ship began to fall apart, she ordered her crew to abandon ship. Then she aimed the cruiser at the largest Krell command ship and accelerated to maximum speed. On screen, the Sunset streaked across the battlefield like a comet. It slammed into the Krell command ship at full velocity. Both vessels exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from orbit. Captain Mina killed herself and 6,000 Krell officers, Una said. She did it without hesitation. Her last words, recorded by her ship's computer, were simple. Una's voice changed again, soft and steady. She said, "For the 12." The lecture hall was dead silent. No one moved. No one breathed. "We won the battle," Una continued. "We lost 43 ships. Almost 4,000 humans died. But we won." The Krell fleet was destroyed. Their defense line was broken. The path to the prison moon was open. She touched her datapad. The display changed to show a gray moon orbiting a gas giant. The moon was covered in military installations. Landing pads. Weapons towers. Bunkers. "This is Dareth," Una said. "The prison where our soldiers were held." We had 3 days left before the execution deadline. Admiral Junho did not wait. He ordered the ground assault to begin immediately. The footage showed transport ships descending through the moon's thin atmosphere. Anti-aircraft fire rose to meet them. Some transports were hit. They fell burning toward the surface. 30,000 soldiers made the drop, Una said. 26,000 reached the ground. The rest died in the landing. But the survivors did not stop. They did not mourn. They grabbed their weapons and began to advance. On screen, human soldiers poured out of their landing craft. They moved with purpose and fury. Krell defenders met them with gunfire. Bodies fell on both sides. The ground battle lasted 6 days, Una said. 6 days of constant fighting. No sleep. No rest. Just the mission. Just the 12. She looked out at the audience. Every face was frozen in shock. On day 30, 12 hours before the execution deadline, our soldiers broke through the final defensive line. They reached the prison. They found our people. The footage showed a dark corridor. Human soldiers moved through it carefully, weapons ready. Then a door opened. Behind it were 12 people in torn uniforms. They were thin. They were injured. But they were alive. All 12 were rescued, Una said. All 12 came home. She touched her datapad one last time. The footage stopped. "That is my example of excess," she said. The silence in the lecture hall was absolute. The holographic display showed a planet. It was gray and cold, covered in ice and rock. The image rotated slowly, giving everyone in the lecture hall a clear view. "This is Kepler-7, Una said. Humans discovered it about 50 years ago. It was rich in rare minerals. We built a mining colony there. 3,000 people lived on that rock." She touched her datapad, and the image changed. Now it showed the colony itself. Simple buildings made of metal and concrete. Light shining in the darkness. People walking through covered tunnels. It looked peaceful. The colony was successful, Una continued. The miners were happy. They had good lives. Many had families there. Children were born on Kepler-7. It was their home. Instructor Ven watched the footage with interest. Her 4 eyes moved independently, taking in every detail. The other students leaned forward in their seats. Despite their doubts about humans, they were curious. Then, Una said, her voice growing slightly harder, the Krell came. The image changed again. Now it showed ships. Massive ships with dark hulls and red lights. They hung in space above the colony like predators waiting to strike. A murmur went through the crowd. Many of the students recognized those ships. The Krell, Ben said softly. They are not members of the council. They live beyond the outer rim. They are hostile. That is one word for them, Una replied. There was something cold in her voice now. Another word is slavers. She let that word hang in the air for a moment. The Krell attacked the colony without warning. They killed anyone who resisted. Then they took prisoners. 12 of them. 12 human soldiers who had been stationed there to protect the miners. The footage changed to show the aftermath. Burning buildings. Bodies in the snow. It was not graphic, but the meaning was clear. This had been a massacre. The rest of the colonists were killed, Una said. 3,000 people. Men, women, children. All dead. The Krell took only the soldiers. They wanted to study human military training. They wanted to know how we fight. One of the Fanari students raised a limb. Sergeant, this is terrible, but I do not understand. Your example of excess is that you lost a colony? That you failed to protect your people? Una turned to look at the student. Her eyes were dark and steady. No, she said. My example has not started yet. This is just the beginning. This is why we did what we did. The Fanari student fell silent. Una continued. When news of the attack reached Earth, our government faced a choice. The colony was gone. 3,000 people were dead. The 12 soldiers were still alive. They were prisoners somewhere in Krell space. She paused, looking out at the audience. The Krell sent us a message. They told us the 12 soldiers would be executed in 30 standard days. They said it was punishment for human expansion. They said we should not come looking for our people. They said it would be unwise. Another pause. The Galactic Council advised us to accept the loss. They said the Krell were too powerful. They said 12 lives were not worth the risk of a larger war. They said we should think about the bigger picture. Ven nodded slowly. That would be the measured response. To accept a painful loss rather than escalate the conflict. Yes, Una agreed. That would be the measured response. She touched her datapad again. The display changed to show a map of human space. Then it began to zoom out, showing more and more of the galaxy. But humans do not always choose the measured response. The map stopped zooming. It now showed a red line stretching from human space to a distant region marked as Krell territory. The distance was enormous. Our military began planning immediately, Una said. The mission was simple in concept but impossible in execution. We would find our soldiers. We would bring them home, no matter what it cost. She touched the datapad again. Numbers began appearing on the screen. First, we gathered intelligence. We sent spy ships into Krell space. Many did not return, but some did. They found the prison where our soldiers were being held. It was on a moon called Dareth, deep in Krell territory. More numbers appeared. The prison was protected by a defense grid, orbital platforms, and a fleet of 30 Krell warships. The moon itself had ground forces numbering in the hundreds of thousands. To reach it, we would have to pass through 3 heavily defended systems. Ven's eyes widened slightly. And how did your military propose to accomplish this rescue? Una almost smiled. Almost. We did not propose, she said. We built. The display changed to show shipyards. Massive shipyards orbiting Earth and its colonies. Ships were being constructed at an incredible rate. Workers moved like ants, building vessels of war. In 15 days, we assembled a rescue fleet. 300 warships, 50 transport vessels carrying ground troops, 12 medical ships, and 1 command carrier. The numbers appeared on screen. The students began to whisper among themselves. 300 ships? For 12 prisoners? The fleet was commanded by Admiral Junho, Yuna continued. He was 72 years old. He had served in the military for 50 years. When he was told the mission was suicide, he volunteered immediately. So did every single crew member. She touched the datapad. The display showed the fleet assembled in formation. It was massive. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. 50,000 soldiers volunteered for the ground assault. We only had room for 30,000. We had to turn people away. They were angry. They wanted to go. They wanted to bring our people home. One of the War representatives stood. His voice rumbled through the hall. Sergeant, forgive my interruption, but these numbers cannot be correct. You sent 300 warships and 50,000 soldiers to rescue 12 prisoners. 30,000 soldiers, Yuna corrected. 50,000 volunteered. Even so, the Vor continued, this is beyond any response we have ever seen. The ratio is absurd. The cost must have been enormous. It was, Yuna agreed simply, but you still do not understand. We were not calculating ratios. We were not measuring costs. 12 of our people were going to die. That was the only number that mattered. The Vor sat back down, stunned. Yun turned back to the display. On day 20 of the countdown, the fleet launched. Admiral Junho addressed the entire force before departure. Do you want to know what he said? No one spoke. Everyone wanted to know. Yuna's voice softened slightly, taking on a different tone as she quoted the Admiral's words. He said, today, we travel farther than any human fleet has gone before. We go into darkness. We go into danger. But we do not go for glory. We do not go for conquest. We go because 12 of our brothers and sisters are waiting for us. They are alone. They are afraid. And they are counting on us to bring them home. Let us not disappoint them. The lecture hall was completely silent. Yuna's voice returned to its normal tone. The fleet departed. Travel time to Krell space was 5 days at maximum speed. During that time, every soldier wrote letters to their families. They knew many would not return. They went anyway. She touched the datapad one more time. On day 25, the human fleet entered Krell space. And then the real operation began. The display flickered and changed, showing the first recorded images of the battle that would follow. Instructor Ven stood perfectly still. Her 4 eyes were fixed on the screen. In all her 200 years of teaching, she had never seen anything like this, and the footage had only just begun. The lecture hall was massive. It floated in the center of Station Prime, the largest space station in the known galaxy. The room could hold more than 5,000 beings from different worlds. Today, it was almost full. Instructor Ven walked to the center of the stage. She was tall, almost 3 meters in height. Her skin was pale blue, and she had 4 eyes that moved independently of each other. She had been teaching at the Galactic Military Academy for over 200 years. She had seen many species come and go. She had watched empires rise and fall. Nothing surprised her anymore, or so she thought. Good morning, students, Ven said. Her voice was calm and measured. It echoed through the hall without the need for any device. Her species had evolved to communicate across vast distances. Today, we will discuss the concept of measured response in warfare. The students shifted in their seats. There were beings of all shapes and sizes. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some had no physical form at all and existed as floating clouds of energy. They came from hundreds of different worlds, all united under the Galactic Council. In the back of the room, sitting alone, was a human. Her name was Una. She was a Marine sergeant from Earth. She had short black hair and dark eyes that seemed to see everything. She wore her dress uniform, dark blue with golden buttons. On her chest were several medals. The other students had noticed them. They had counted them. 12 medals for someone so young was unusual. Una did not speak to the other students. She did not need to. She was here to learn, to observe, and to represent her species. Humanity had only joined the Galactic Council 3 years ago. They were still considered newcomers. Children, really, compared to species that had traveled to stars for millions of years. Measured response, then continued, is the foundation of civilized warfare. When an enemy attacks, you respond with equal force. No more, no less. This prevents escalation. This prevents unnecessary death. This is what separates us from the primitive species that destroy themselves. She pressed a button and a holographic display appeared behind her. It showed a chart with different species and their military doctrines. The Fenari, for example, Ven said, pointing to a species of tall, insect-like creatures, practice perfect measured response. When the Kaal Empire destroyed one of their colony ships, killing 3,000 Fenari, they responded by destroying one Kaal ship of equal size. The war ended quickly. Both sides understood the rules. The Fenari students in the audience clicked their mandibles in approval. They were proud of their restraint. The Vor, Ven continued, responded to a border incursion by pushing the enemy back exactly as far as they had advanced. Not 1 meter more. This showed strength without aggression. The Vor, massive creatures that looked like walking mountains, rumbled in agreement. Ven smiled. At least, Una thought it was a smile. It was hard to tell with 4 eyes. Today, Ven announced, I want each species represented here to share one example of excess from their history. One moment where your people went beyond measured response. We will analyze these examples and learn from them. The room grew quiet. This was an unusual request. Most species did not like to talk about their failures. But it was a teaching moment, and Ven was known for her unconventional methods. One by one, the species representatives stood and spoke. The Fenari representative, a tall female named Kes, spoke first. 200 years ago, our fleet destroyed an enemy station that had only damaged, not destroyed, one of our ships. We consider this our greatest shame. We responded with destruction when repair would have been equal. Ven nodded. Thank you, Kes. A thoughtful example. Next came the Vor representative. His voice was like thunder. Once, our soldiers pushed an enemy back 100 meters beyond the original border. We returned to land immediately and apologized. It was excessive. Again, Ven nodded. Excellent control, even in the heat of battle. The examples continued. Each species shared their moment of excess. A ship destroyed when only a warning shot was needed. A city evacuated when only a building should have been cleared. To Una, listening in the back, these examples seemed almost funny. These beings considered such small things to be excessive. She thought about Earth. She thought about her own history. She thought about what humans had done in war. Finally, after almost an hour, Ven's 4 eyes turned to the back of the room. They focused on the lone human sitting in the shadows. Sergeant Una, Ven said, you are the only human in this academy. Your species is new to us. We know very little about your military history. Would you share an example of excess from human warfare? The room turned to look at Una. 5,000 eyes and more focused on the small human woman in the dark uniform. Una did not move at first. She was thinking. She was considering what to say. The other species had shared such small examples. A ship destroyed here. A border moved there. These were considered excessive. She stood slowly. Her boots clicked on the floor as she walked down the long aisle toward the stage. The other students watched her, some with curiosity, some with slight contempt. Humans were new. Humans were small. Humans were primitive. When Yuna reached the stage, she looked up at Instructor Ven. The alien towered over her. But Yuna was not afraid. She had faced worse things than tall aliens. Just one example? Yuna asked. Her voice was calm, almost casual. Ven tilted her head. Yes, Sergeant. One example will be sufficient. Yuna nodded slowly. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. It was a standard military datapad, worn from use. I brought footage, she said. Ven's 4 eyes blinked, one after another. Footage? Yes, Yuna replied. One example was hard to choose. So I brought footage. I thought it might help explain. There was a murmur in the crowd. The other species exchanged glances. This was unusual. No one had brought footage before. Ven considered for a moment, then nodded. Very well, Sergeant. Please, connect your device to the display. Yuna walked to the control panel at the side of the stage. She connected her datapad with practiced ease. The holographic display flickered for a moment, then cleared. On the screen appeared words in the common galactic language. Operation Taiho Earth. Year 2847. Classification DCLSSFI. The room fell silent. Every being leaned forward, curious to see what the human had brought. Yuna returned to the center of the stage. She stood next to Ven, looking out at the thousands of students. Her face showed no emotion. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady. Before I begin, she said, I should explain something about humans. We are new to the galaxy. We are small. We are, as many of you believe, primitive. But there is one thing about us that you should understand. She paused, letting the silence build. We do not leave our people behind. Ever. She pressed a button on her datapad. The footage began to play, and the Galactic Military Academy learned, for the first time, what human excess truly meant.